Life is so interesting sometimes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Mint. I am Dan B. Mintin, and I do be Mintin, Executive Creative Director of ENCHANTMINT Labs, where we build blockchain-based digital collectible experiences that are out of this world, or as I like to call them, BBDCEs. Today, we've got a really special guest. Please welcome Daniel Hwang. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Daniel, you have a huge background in a lot of different crypto projects, protocols, NFTs, all kinds of various things that you've been involved in. What exactly is your title?
Call me the Validator Whisperer.
The Validator Whisperer.
When you see my pleasure.
Love it. Could you tell me a little bit about how you first discovered crypto and kind of got involved in the space?
First got into crypto, I actually had used to work at a law firm. I was defending HSBC because HSBC had been implicated in money laundering. I quit and wanted to burn down all the banks, figuratively.
Figuratively speaking.
And my friend came up to me, and when I was complaining to him about how I thought the whole system was messed up, he said, hey, we're going to replace the banks with Bitcoin. And that's kind of how I fell down the rabbit hole. And he and I started mining.
Wow.
I ended up going to the Philippines to do relief work after I left the law firm. And I'd built a small computer learning center there with some of my own funds. There was a small village near Iloilo, the Philippines. And I found that a lot of women were not in that village, and they were actually working as maids or nannies abroad. And so I had started helping with remittances. A lot of them were using Western Union and paying 17+% fees. And so I was like, hey, I just happened to be into this cryptocurrency stuff. The transaction fees at the time were quite low. The problem was, even though I brought in internet, I brought in computers, the UX was too difficult.
It's raw. It's f***ing raw.
But I ended up going back to America and then started doing distributed systems research within the genetic sequencing field for bioinformatics.
Gosh, it sounds really complicated.
Gone to grad school, studied cryptography under Matt Green.
Matt Green was you.
Honey, I'm speechless.
Wait, say that again? Because that is big. I didn't really realize that. You worked with Matt Green?
Yeah, I had actually gone to grad school because I wanted to be with Matt Green. Matt Green was one of the co-authors to the Zcash paper.
Yeah.
My research was in distributed systems through the Information Security Institute at Johns Hopkins. After I finished grad school, I graduated early.
Well, your resume is completely inadequate.
I became the head of ecosystem development for Terra, and quickly found out a lot of the problems there, and I rage quit. Told the press about things, articles came out, no one gave a shit, kind of that stuff. So
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care. Let me tell you something. We don't care.
Terra was quite an ideological departure from why I had began working in crypto in the first place. Self-sovereignty was violated, decentralization was violated.
I feel violated right now. Wow.
So I actually support zero-knowledge ZKL1s. It's pretty cool. With Bitcoin, we had decentralized consensus, and then Ethereum was created because Bitcoin did not have that programmability, and then Zcash was a fork of Bitcoin that had privacy, and then now we have programmability and privacy with ZK. And something that's really cool is that it's developing a brand new infrastructure class, these ZK miners. POW had Bitcoin mining, POS had validators. Now we have ZK miners.
I'm kind of getting it, and you're doing a great job explaining it. But if you're right, that really changes everything.
Everything.
The criticism that Bitcoin got a lot of when the NFT boom was going on was that Bitcoin is burning down the planet because you have all these miners using coal energy, and then carbon emissions are quite high.
Right.
And even though there's a large population of people who are in crypto around the world, the majority of the world probably is not gung-ho about crypto.
Yet.
Right.
Let's compare that then to the value that the aerospace industry has. Let's say the majority of the world does value aerospace industry because they want to be able to travel, get to places, etc. The aerospace industry emits 9 times more carbon emissions than the Bitcoin blockchain network.
Are you kidding me?
Even though there's this other industry that emits so much more carbon than Bitcoin, we don't necessarily see people shunning the aerospace industry and telling them to shut down.
How dare you?
The key here is that the emissions amount and the value for what is causing those emissions is quite different for like Bitcoin speculative value versus this understood value for aerospace industry. And so the value add for the ZK mining is not just Web3 like Bitcoin might be. The example I like to give a lot in terms of the Web2 value that ZK mining has is I used to do research at a genetic sequencing lab, and we needed to use ZK proofs from time to time. It was quite expensive to run these ZK proofs, and we had to do it ourselves. For example, we needed to collect gut bacteria sequences, and we got that gut bacteria through human poop.
It's a bit nutty.
So let's say there's 5 different labs that are kind of studying some of the same stuff and need access to like a gut bacteria data set. It's quite expensive to attain them. So if these 5 labs have different data sets, they don't want to like give those data sets up for free and share it, right? Because they acquire it at cost. And so what a really cool technique in cryptography is we have something called fully homomorphic encryption.
No homo.
Most deaf.
Which allows you to encrypt data, so it's private, and then run computations on it without seeing it. It's basically if you have like this black box and everyone puts their data into the black box, no one can see it, but you can still run queries or informative computations on it.
Wow.
The problem is that like you don't know if the other lab is just submitting fake data because it's all encrypted. And so what's important, like you can use ZK to basically prove certain properties of the data that you're submitting to the aggregate data that's being encrypted. So you can say, okay, the data that I'm submitting is not fake. It's actually high quality because there's properties I can prove about it. And then we can continue on. And zero knowledge proofs have been around since the 1980s.
Try New Coke ZK. It's a top secret recipe.
But this is like a clear Web2 example of research making use of this, which is not Web3, right?
Right.
And so in terms of the value that the aerospace industry provides, it's not just Web3, right? It's obviously Web2 or like the traditional world.
Sure.
Zero knowledge proofs enhance the applicability of both Web3 and Web2, which is so exciting to see also this infrastructure class that's now going to be incentivized, get paid and rewarded for their work in these blockchains. And that ZK mining hardware is now also applicable to like labs like mine. Instead of us having done the ZK proofs ourselves in the cloud, we can go to a marketplace of infrastructure providers that also participate in blockchain, but they can also be service providers to the Web2 industry.
You're a brilliant cryptographer, but we all have room to improve.
So I think that's quite exciting to see this establishment of this new infrastructure class.
So it could be used for lots of different industries beyond just Web3, but also like the traditional world, like legacy or Web2 use cases.
Yeah.
And you founded a DAO for NFTs, right?
So the story behind that is back in 2021, I co-founded Korea's first DAO called HanDAO, which is primarily supporting a lot of artists.
Just for our audience,
I'm asking for a friend, of course.
could you briefly explain like what a DAO is?
DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, but it's essentially a coordination tool that allows many different parties to work together for a common goal. You can basically break down that acronym into different parts to see how DAO you are.
That is so DAO.
Are you truly decentralized? Are you autonomous, right? Can you continue operating even though all the original people left? And can you be effective as an organization with that coordination? So I was teaching Korean artists like how to make their own smart contracts and deploy them and create their own NFTs, what NFTs could be used for and what they don't necessarily need to be used for because NFTs were hot.
That's hot.
To be honest, at that time, I was not a very big fan of CryptoPunks.
It's evil. Evil.
Mostly because of how it was kind of shoehorning the NFT ecosystem into essentially like sneaker reselling.
But what if they're like really nice Yeezys?
Sneakerheads go and when there's a new sneaker that comes out, they buy all the Jordans for like market price and they sell it for like 5x, which was kind of happening like this flipping market in the NFT ecosystem.
Right, which I think has kind of captivated the whole NFT space, right? I mean, so much of it has been speculation and reselling of these digital assets.
Yeah. People buy and trade NFTs and they're buying it. They're like, okay, I'll buy it at this price and I'll sell it for higher. And is that it? It's just like buying and selling. And so I wanted to like make sure that the NFT ecosystem was making full use of what NFTs could be used for, right? There's so many different interesting things that it could be used for.
Yes.
Now let's rewind. There was actually this really cool foreign policy article that I'd read, which was about this Korean phenomenon, basically translated to F you spending.
What is it fuck me for?
Korean society is in this sort of like socioeconomic crisis where the gap is so large. It's so expensive to buy a house. And so even though someone works their entire life, they're not going to be able to buy a house. So they just like use our money on expensive luxury items, expensive phones, etc. And so there was this foreign policy article that was about that. And there was this artwork that I saw that was just amazing, cartoonish, but depicting of social commentary that I thought was like so engaging. So 5 years later, I was following that same artist still on Instagram, and he had posted some story about how he was having trouble like minting on super rare. And I reached out to him saying, hey, like, I didn't know your NFTs. I'm a fan. You know, I work in crypto, I'm an engineer, I can help you with all this stuff. And so he and I were just like DMing back and forth.
It goes down in the DM. It go down.
And so I had helped him, and I was like paying all his gas fees.
This is insane.
His name was Mr.Misang, and he literally just became the Beeple of Korea. All of his artworks were selling for like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And then he eventually joined HanDAO and contributed to help the Korean community.
Amazing. How did you get more people to join the DAO? The word just spread?
I started helping these artists on my own. And then a lot of other people in the community were like, oh, this is really cool that you're helping these guys. Can we help? And then just started getting bigger and bigger.
So is it more than just Mr.Misang in terms of artists?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's like Nakta, Yo-Yo Jin, Greta. There's so many talented Korean artists. And so like the reason why it was Korea specific, obviously I'm Korean.
Why didn't I wear my Korean art shirt today?
What an idiot! Oh!
Like CryptoPunks, I think represents a very small part of what NFTs can do.
Mm-hmm.
But because CryptoPunks was so outspoken and large, it was basically drowning out all the other interesting use cases that people can kind of look at and use. Maybe like different cultures have different ways of interacting with technology and like this stuff. So what better way to like help self-organize a very distinct culture like Korea to start engaging with this technology and then express their own cultural creativity. That's why we made it so specific.
Yeah, I love how you brought your heritage together with different industries. So that's super awesome. And it's a very cool story how, you know, it happened originally when you saw Mr. Misang having trouble minting and then got involved with that. And then it kind of just grew from there, right?
There's like some bug on the UI, I think, but yeah.
So a coding bug turned into this awesome creative DAO that you have.
It's wild. Life is so interesting sometimes.
Please accept this gift from us super rare bugs to you Koreans. For you.
So there's this art gallery in Korea called Kansong Art Museum. And so this art gallery has a lot of historical relics from Korea that basically Korea had protected. And so these are precious artifacts that's core to Korea's culture. But the Kansong Art Gallery was running out of money and they needed to figure out ways of raising money. One option was sell their artwork. You don't want to sell their artwork, right? Like that's precious work.
Right.
And so you can use fractionalized NFTs. You can like have the ownership of a particular artifact be tied to an NFT. Let's say it's like the turtle ship, the famous turtle ship of Korea. That's a ship with like iron, completely armored like a turtle.
What do you think?
I like turtles.
And you can make an NFT for that gives you ownership rights. You can sell that turtle ship for like $10 million. And then you can fractionalize that NFT into like, let's say 10 different pieces. If you own all 10 pieces of those fractions of that NFT, then you can have the total ownership rights. But the museum should not want to give that up, right? You don't want to sell this priceless piece. And so you can sell 9 of those pieces, right? It won't allow someone to have all 10. It's like collecting all the Dragon Balls.
I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't true.
The museum would always hold one so that that piece will never leave it. And then it can get price exposure from all the other 9 out of 10 pieces that someone else buys, right? Someone was like, I want a piece of that history. So they could own part of it and it's valuable to them. And maybe in aggregate, those 9 out of 10 fractions can bring in more than $10 million and the museum doesn't have to give it away. That's like a really cool use case of like how NFT technology can be developed and be used. That's not just like sneaker reselling, right? Like,
and that's interesting too, because I think, wasn't Christie's doing something like that with Banksy artwork?
And he did a Banksy at the crime scene, just for us.
They were doing some of these fractional auctions, I believe. Maybe it was someone who used to work at Christie's, I think.
It's a really cool use case, of course.
Very interesting use case. So what we try to do at Enchantment is design experiences around digital collectibles that are unique and really next level experiences that can help people get introduced to the technology. Because I think there's awesome real world use cases, a lot of which you went into and described, that can benefit humanity as a whole. And I think cryptocurrency in general does that. That's why I got into it. Sounds like that's why you got into it. And I'm trying to kind of like mainstream some of these use cases. Like you said, avoid the whole sneaker reselling thing that has kind of plagued the space in a way for, the past few years. So I want to bring different things that people can experience and own so that they can say, all right, I understand how this is valuable to me. I own this digitally. And then hopefully from there, maybe, go down the rabbit hole like we did and get more involved in the technology and understand how it can really help them. That's my goal and my mission. But that being said, where do you see the future of Web3, specifically with like NFTs going?
I think a really big one is like tokenization of carbon credits. And so I had also co-founded like the blockchain infrastructure carbon offset working group that eventually became Blockchain X Climate nonprofit.
Is there anything you can't do?
For example, you planted 1 acre of forest, and this amount of forest is able to suck 1 ton of carbon dioxide out of the air, which is good. And then once you tokenize these carbon credits, now you can sell it to someone else. This is 1 ton of carbon dioxide that I pulled out of the air. It's valuable. And then someone like Microsoft that's going to try to say, hey, we're going to go carbon neutral. They buy that carbon credit, even though they didn't plant the forest themselves. They're able to get the value.
We're going completely carbon neutral!
What's interesting about the traditional carbon market is that these carbon credits are dominated by these things called carbon registries. These registries have these particular methodologies that they go and say, hey, you planted a forest. Let's make sure that you planted the forest correct. Are you protecting the forest? Are you making sure all the carbon dioxide is sucked out of the air? But these registries are using a lot of outdated tech. So there's not a lot of like retail or like people that can get access to it if they want to offset their own emissions, or like smaller companies. And then also you can't like buy fractions of carbon credits, right? Like if you have a very like specific way of measuring your own carbon emissions, you can't buy like 1.37 tons of carbon credits, right? You have to buy like 2. And usually people overbuy, so they offset more than they produce.
That makes sense.
But then the cryptocurrency industry and its applications on top of it are so fascinating because you have all these applications that are like modular, right? Like a lot of people refer to DeFi, like decentralized finance, permissionless borrowing, lending protocols, as money Legos.
Everything is awesome.
Is this product you piece together to create like something else. Now you can have streaming carbon credits. Every time you drive a car, it's automatically like, offsetting.
Interesting.
You can have a carbon credit NFT that like is now attached to a wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, and now you have green Bitcoin. So like you can offset like whatever emissions that Bitcoin had from its mining. That's one thing that I think is really fascinating about what NFTs can do in terms of like these other industries. Another more recent one that I found so exciting is there's this Ethereum token standard called ERC 6551, which is literally called token bound accounts. And so like Benny Jiang is one of the guys who had helped create CryptoKitties, like one of the very first NFTs that ever existed.
Yes.
He was like kind of evangelizing this. And token bound accounts basically allow NFTs to have their own wallets. So you can have these NFTs that you can provide a little bit of money to this NFT, and then I can go and do whatever it needs to do. Imagine your CryptoPunk.
Oh, no, not these guys again.
You give it 2 ETH, and then it can go off and buy or trade. Now imagine like you can combine like AI to like these NFTs. Now these NFTs can basically be these autonomous agents that have the ability to spend money on your behalf and can go do whatever it wants, right? And then Benny Jiang has this thing called NPC Day, where he's been going and giving these talks about like, hey, you can have like these AI NPCs. Imagine like you have like this Pokemon game, Ash Ketchum NFT now has a wallet that has its different Pokemon NFTs. And he has like his own wallet that has money that he needs to spend to buy Pokeballs or potions or something, can go off and do its own thing and play a game for you.
It's because I'm gonna wreck the shit out of you.
Oh shit!
And then even like you as humans can play in these games.
Wow.
And then you can have like these more expressive and like these autonomous agents that exist in reality alongside you that have some of their own sort of autonomous thought processes with real money that you can also engage with. And it becomes a perfect storm of NFT technology, right? AI technology, like these standards that allow you to use both of them. And then it's just like culminating.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's another really fascinating use case of NFTs. There's actually a company called Spacebar, which makes one of the first games using token-bound accounts, where you have like this spaceship that you can fly around. You can have your NFT connected to it, like a random NFT that you have, a CryptoPunk, a Bored Ape Yacht Club, etc. And that can have its own account balance and stuff that you can use. And so it's a fascinating look into like a step towards that type of future.
You just blew my mind with all that. That reminds me too of, you wrote the article, right, about how we could spin up different characters in games.
Oh yeah, NFT value to interoperability. Yeah. One of the concepts there was that you can use different wallets for different activities that you want to do on chain.
Right.
And you can have interoperability, right? Like, what's the use of me having a watch and I go to another country and that watch disappears? The watch is more valuable to me if it could persist in all of my activities that I do across this ecosystem.
I totally agree with you. And I think the more that mainstream users can kind of understand and get their feet wet with this technology, that we can progress and make all these amazing things a reality that I think are maybe nascent right now still. We're still early. Hashtag we're still early. But obviously the technology is progressing all the time, and you're certainly part of that. If there was anyone ever with the credentials on all of this, from the very foundational elements to all of this high-end artwork that you've been working on, it's amazing to talk to awesome people like you pushing the space forward. And thanks so much for joining us today and giving us your point of view on the future of Web3 and NFTs.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan. It's great jamming on a lot of these cool ideas.
Same here.
It's great. Bye.